All right. We take a moment to just start off with a few deep breaths. Breathe in deeply, and let go on the exhale. And maybe you can see if you can let go of any tension that you're carrying with you from the day when you exhale. Just let that all go right out. If it wants to. No need to force anything. And when it feels good, you can return to breathing normally. You might check to make sure you're in a comfortable sitting posture. See if there's any little niggling discomforts that could be adjusted. When you feel settled in, you might begin by letting attention rest on the sensations of the breath. You might feel the whole breath if you like, all the way from the tip of the nose to somewhere inside your abdomen, if you feel it down there. Just letting it come on its own. Letting the sensations arise and pass away without interference. One technique you might use to help the mind stabilize in the present moment is to play with the level of detail the mind notices. When the mind has a sufficient amount of detail to notice, the object is varied and interesting enough, the mind is more likely to stay in contact with that object and find it interesting. So if your mind is not settled on the breath or is perhaps wavering in concentration, you might see if you can notice the breath in a bit more detail as a way to interest the mind. The mind likes novelty, and it can find that in more detailed objects. And if the mind has some amount of stability, and if this feels good to you, one thing you might notice is you might notice and see if there's any sense of peace that's being associated with the breath. Sometimes the breath can be quite calming and easeful. especially when meditating. It's not always the case, and it's okay if it's not. You might check and see if there's any of that there. If so, you might let that feeling of peace or ease be the object of attention. It's really letting the mind notice fully what that feels like. Notice any changes that occur. It's really letting the mind know all there is to know about that sense of peace or ease. It can be easy to fall into this pattern of meditation where meditation is effortful and maybe a bit difficult and grim. It doesn't have to be that way. It's perfectly skillful to notice positive qualities of the mind when they arise. It's perfectly fine to let your mind enjoy the fruits of practice. So if there is peace or ease in the mind, feel free to enjoy that. It's a lovely feeling. And if you don't feel any sense of peace or ease, or if you do feel that and the peace fades, just come back to the breath. When peace arises again, perhaps you can let that be your object of concentration. Give yourself that gift. Breathing in and breathing out. Noticing any peace or ease or tranquility that arises. And resting in that when that's available. And for this last portion of the meditation, if you like, and if there is peace to be found in experience, you might simply rest as peace. Resting as the stillness that's always there, regardless of what's present in the mind. You might let go of any conditioned experience and simply rest as the ground in which experience arises. You are nothing that arises and passes away. You are nothing in experience. Simply rest as that which is aware. Perfect peace is to be found there. And thank you all for coming. It's really nice to see you all. Some quick announcements before we get started. So everything at Dassanaya is going to proceed as normal for this week and for next week. But for the following 3 weeks, Dhammadipa will be in town and I'll be out of town for much of it. So the Tuesday night schedule, the class is still going to be at the same time as usual, but there will be different speakers for those 3 weeks. I think the schedule, at least as it stands now, is that Dhammadipa is going to speak, and then Jennifer Cho, and then Kylie Mang Jayaraja. So you'll get some nice teachers over the holidays. And the Wednesday program will still be going on, but I won't be there. It will be kind of just a sort of peer group for those 3 weeks. So there are some upcoming events too. So from December 29th to the 31st, there's going to be an online retreat with Dhammadipa and Rocky. So a New Year's retreat. On January 7th, at 10 a.m. here at the Vihara, Dhammadipa is going to have a kind of community get together, and she's invited everyone who wants to come for cider and donuts, and to chat with her and with other community folks. And then later in the day, she's leading the tour at the Asian Art Museum up in DC. That's from I think 2:30 to 5:30. So lots of goings on. Yeah, I know some of you guys have spoken about wanting to see Dhammadipa, and that might be a good time to do so. So tonight I wanted to talk about interdependence, which in my mind kind of links to what we've been talking about the past few weeks, the 3 marks of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta. I guess I see interdependence as kind of underlying all 3 of those, but it's maybe my own personal way of seeing things. And so this is a concept that's talked about quite a bit in Buddhism, and there's different names for the concept, or perhaps there are maybe different ways of coming at the same concept. I guess there's dependent origination. There's dependent arising, dependent co-arising, this, that conditionality. The Pali word is paticca samuppada, which is probably mispronounced. I took a Pali class for 3 months and I learned almost nothing. I'm sure that's mispronounced. But I guess maybe the way I would kind of frame this concept, at least in the way I'm kind of talking about it today, is that everything that arises does so based on causes and conditions alone. There's nothing really outside of that drives the forces of causality or conditionality. So basically, no separate self. And the Buddha's way of talking about this, I like this way of describing it. He was talking about this, that conditionality. He says, this is Majjhima Nikaya 32. He says, when there is this, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When there is not this, this does not come to be. And with the cessation of this, that ceases. Which is a pretty pithy way of putting it. And when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about, like metaphors and visual aids to kind of support this concept. And I just, there's this video, it's not strictly a Dhamma video, but it's this great support for dependent origination. I'm going to show it. It's just a lovely video. Like it'll be helpful for making the points I want to make, but it's also just, it's very joyful. And I feel good giving you guys like 4 minutes of joy. So I'm going to try and share that. Share my screen real quick. So that was dependent origination. Things happen because other things cause them to happen. It's the understanding that everything is connected. And this is kind of directly counter to the narrative of the self that we construct. This story that we tell about ourselves is that we are this kind of separate individual thing with our own kind of thoughts and desires and characteristics. But dependent origination kind of gets directly to the heart of that error. And the Buddha considered this one of the fundamental concepts of Buddhism. In Majjhima Nikaya 28, he said, "Now this had been said by the Blessed One. One who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma. One who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination." So in my mind, dependent origination points directly to awakening. And I guess the way I'm thinking about it at the moment is that, just like you can take a lens and you can, use a lens to see like very small things, like with a microscope. You can turn the lens around and you can see very big things, like with a telescope. I guess I'm thinking about dependent origination in that way at the moment. You can use it to look at, very small and very minute parts of experience. And you can also like turn it around and look at the bigger picture and apply it to that. I think both of those ways are useful, and I'll kind of go over them both tonight. So the kind of small, minute and precise view of dependent origination is the way it's kind of traditionally taught. Usually given as the 12-link model of dependent origination, which is this the cycle of steps that occurs, kind of in the lines of what we saw in the video. The video was this series of steps that occur, and then something happens. But the 12-link model of dependent origination kind of outlines the circle of samsara, how we suffer. And I'm not going to go over the whole model in any kind of detail. That's really worthy of a whole talk. But I did want to lay it out for you and then kind of pull out the kind of most important part of that. So the model is, ignorance, conditions, sankharas, which are, volitional formations or maybe choices. This conditions consciousness, which conditions nama rupa, so kind of categorizing things, which conditions sense bases and contact and vedana, feeling tone, craving and clinging and becoming and birth, and finally old age and death. And it's this the cycle that kind of occurs endlessly in our lives as we touch it off as we move through the world, and it's just all these like permutations of this are going on at the same time. But the main point of this this understanding is maybe 3 links. You can distill it down to 3 of them. So contact. So you see or hear or feel something, or thought arises. There's a phenomena that arises in the mind. And this conditions Vedana. So we've been habituated into treating these phenomena as something that's positive or negative or neither. So this Vedana, this feeling tone, can arise from contact. And from Vedana, craving arises or can arise. And craving is the kind of pushing away or pulling towards you. Craving conditions suffering. And so the important part of this is the conditionality part. Just as in the video, I guess in the video they showed the sequence correctly when everything was working, but you can probably imagine there were many times, I'm sure, where they shot that video where something was out of place and the sequence didn't go as planned. And this is the point to bring to the model of dependent origination. If one of these 12 links is not present or is not there or is blocked, then this chain doesn't occur and suffering doesn't occur. And so Lee Brasington has a lovely analogy that illustrates why this is useful. So there's a light on the ceiling fan up above, and imagine that I wanted this light to be off, right? There are many things that condition this light. So the light is conditioned on having a functioning light bulb and the wiring between the socket and the breaker box being intact, and the breaker being intact or connected, the wiring out to the transformer and the power plant. So there's all these conditions to this light being on. And if I want the light off, I can break any of those conditions and the light will go off. I can do things like remove the light bulb or cut the wiring or destroy the transformer or something. But if I want the light to be off, there's one very easy way to do that, which is to turn off the light switch. And this happens to be true of the dependent origination. There is one link that is much easier to avert or to knock out than others, and that's craving. And so this gets to the heart of the practice. This is directly in the Four Noble Truths. So the second noble truth is craving, condition, suffering, and the third noble truth is that the cessation of craving conditions the cessation of suffering. So that is practice right there. That is all the kind of skillful means that we learn to practice. The Brahma viharas, or the dealing with the stories that we tell in our lives, or learning to be mindful, or concentration practice. All of that is directed in one form or another to reducing craving and thereby reducing suffering. So I think that's it's really helpful to understand the mechanics of practice. That way, there's all these different things that we do and we learn, but it's all in service of letting go of craving so that we don't suffer. So I think that's helpful to understand. In particular, I've mentioned that I spent quite a bit of my practice kind of practicing with that directly, just sitting and letting go of craving without any kind of intermediary practice. And I found that quite helpful. So there's that way of understanding dependent origination or interdependence. But it can also be quite a bit broader than that too. This idea of the 12-link model, I find pretty hard to map most of those links onto direct experience. In large part, I guess, because things go by so fast, and it's I will say that model is less directly applicable to my day-to-day life. But I think when you look at the big picture, you can help interdependence become something that's meaningful in your day-to-day life. So, interdependence or dependent origination is the understanding in which everything is connected, right? There's nothing separate, nothing standing alone. Everything affects everything else. We are all just one piece of this unity, this shared system. We're all part of this web of causes and conditions. I think in American culture, there's like there's still the trope of the rugged individual, the guy who kind of goes off alone and does his own thing, and maybe doesn't want to be bothered by others, and just leave me alone. I'll take care of myself. But life doesn't work that way. Even if you kind of go out away from other people, everything you do affects the world, and that effect on the world ripples out to everyone and to everything. So maybe I can illustrate this in a little more detail. This body and this mind are not solid things. We tend to see the world that way, but if you think about it, it's not actually correct. So you might take yourself to be your thoughts, right? But your thoughts are conditioned by the world around you, right? You are listening to me at this moment, and that's playing some effect on your mental state and the thoughts that are arising and passing away. You can imagine if you were, sitting quietly with just yourself, your experience would be different. You can imagine too if, I don't know, perhaps you had, stayed late at work and you were talking to your boss at this moment, and your boss was, angry at you. Your experience would be different. Your thoughts and your feelings would be different. And that's always true. That's true of everything that arises in the mind. It's true of everything that arises in the body too. Perhaps you're sitting on a chair. Your experience with the body would be different if you were not. Your experience with the body would be different if you didn't have anything to eat today, or if it was like much colder in your room or something like that. That only just like scratches the surface of the things that condition you, because everything you encounter has an effect on your body and your mind. And so when you talk about yourself as a kind of separate individual, it shears you of that context of the world around you that's affecting you. And there's some falseness in that too, right? You can't really actually talk about yourself as something who has like stable characteristics, or a kind of like solid physical form. You can't say something like I am an anxious person, right? You might be experiencing anxiety in the moment, but that anxiety is conditioned by other things, and when those conditions go away, that anxiety will go away too. So what does it mean to say that you're an anxious person? Well, no, you're not. You're anxious when conditions cause that, and you're not when they don't. So you can't talk about you in any kind of way without also incorporating the things around you. And you can't talk about the things around you without incorporating the things around them, and so on and so forth. And that understanding folds everything into one kind of unity. There's no way to like truthfully put a solid barrier between anything. Everything is just one. It's all this web of conditionality, and you are sitting at the center as the culmination of everything that has come before you. And if anything would have been different, then you would be different too. So maybe another analogy is imagine this great ocean. It's full of drops of water. These kind of causes and conditions for things that are constantly like moving and jostling with each other. And you can imagine a spotlight shining on the ocean. That might be your experience. You have an experience of like some small portion of this ocean of causes and conditions that arise in your experience. but none of that is really you. It's just this. It's just this like one system moving around. Everything kind of having an effect on one another. And freedom comes from this understanding. The way we construct this narrative of ourselves, we do this thing. We sort of see what comes in, or some amount of what comes in, like some of how we interact with the world, and the things that affect us. And we see some of what goes out, like we see what this body does, and we see how we move and how we speak, and thoughts and such. But we don't really see the middle part of what happens, like there's this veil of ignorance in between the kind of input and output of what we consider ourself. And that veil of ignorance is it's where we put the self. We have this like I don't know. It's sort of like magic. We don't really know what's going on, so we make up this idea that there's like some person in here doing things. I don't know. Like it's go back to the video that we saw earlier. It's like if you see the beginning where the guy like uses the car to knock over the first dominoes, and you see the end where the paint cannons fire, but you don't see the middle. It's just this kind of like blank space, or it's like in this space that's not fully understood. That's what we're doing with the sense of self, and that is the thing that can be seen clearly through practice. Learning to see conditionality or dependent origination clearly will remove the veil of ignorance that is the self. It will allow you to see that, no, there's not a person there. It's just, like dominoes and bowling balls and umbrellas and shopping carts and whatever. It's just this kind of lawful process of cause and condition that plays out. And you see that all the stuff that you took to be you, the like mental phenomena and physical phenomena are just those dominoes, are just those causes and conditions. And that's where freedom lies, when you see that there's nothing actually there. No separate self actually there. That's what I have for you all today. I hope that was helpful.